Hey everyone, I hope you all are doing well. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to upload large files to your backend. Alright, so it's going to be a continuation off the code that we wrote in this tutorial. Don't worry if you guys didn't watch this video or follow along with this. I do have the repo in the GitHub, and I will show you in this tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and clone this GitHub repo, and we're going to work on that and refactor the code based on that. Okay, so with that aside, I'm going to show you just a quick demo of what this looks like. We're going to also have a progress bar. So I have a 301 megabyte video here, and I set this file size limit to like 2 gigabytes in this tutorial. So let's just see what that looks like. And this is what you can expect from this tutorial. And if you see here in the, let's go back to the backend. I'm going to right click and reveal this in the File Explorer. And I'm going to go in here. And I believe this is the latest video. And if you see here, it's been fully uploaded. And yeah, that's really it. So let's jump into VS Code and let's get started, guys. Hey guys, so if you didn't follow along with the first video where I created the base structure for uploading a file with React and Express, don't worry, I have the repo on GitHub and we can just clone it from here, and I'm actually going to do the same thing so that you guys can follow along, probably because most of you that are watching this probably didn't see the first video. If you did, that's awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this code, and I'm going to copy this repo URL, and then I'm going to go into my File Explorer, and I'm going to go on desktop, right click on that, and I'm going to open with git bash. I'm just going to clone it into our desktop. So I'm going to do git shift insert, which will just paste that, and then it's just going to create a this repo. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do git clone. So it's just going to clone this repo and create a folder called upload_file. And it's going to just have all the, base structure that we need for adding on to this to uploading large files. Okay, so it looks like it's cloned. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up VS Code. I'm going to open up a new window. And then I'm going to open the folder. Okay, so what we're going to have to do first is I'm going to open up the terminal, and we're going to have to install all the packages for the client side and also the server side. So with this terminal, I'm going to cd into the client, and then first thing I'm going to do is just do npm install. Okay, so this might take a while because it's going to install the packages, so I'll probably just fast forward through this. Okay, so the client side packages have finished installing, and don't worry guys, if you are seeing this code for the first time, I will go over everything and in brief detail just so that everyone can follow along easier. Okay, so let's cd into the server side, and then let's look at the packages. So I'm going to do npm install here, and probably shouldn't take as long. So while that is running, let's go over what the current setup looks like. So the components, all we have here is the file upload component, and I'll start the server as soon as the packages are installed. But this component will basically take care of everything. Let me see if I can just pull this up real fast. So if you see here, I'm just pulling up my previous video that this is what it looks like. We have the file input there. Okay, so that's all this component is doing. Okay, so this file upload component will take care of that, and we're going to have to modify this in order to upload large files, because right now it only accepts 20 megabytes maximum. And then that's really it for the, well, we also have a file service that is basically taking care of the entire uploading logic, which makes the API requests to the backend and also sends a response back to the component. Okay, so that's really it for the client side. The server side, we have our kind of like controller service repository layer setup. So we just have one file controller. We only have one route right now, which is upload file. And since it's a 20 megabyte or less file, which is the max, we're able to, upload that in one API call. Now, if it's greater than 20 megabytes, we're going to have to break that up into blocks of the file, or if you can call it chunks, where we will have to kind of make we will have to hit the same endpoint, and we'll send chunks of that file. Okay, so we have the controller, service, and repository. Let me pull up the DB. We do have one table here right now, and we're going to add another table. So let me go over the plan for us to expand this project into uploading large files. So right now it'll only do 20 megabytes, right? So what we need to do is basically create some kind of file session, between the back end and the front end, so that it can upload in the same, it can keep uploading to the same file and appending to it in the back end. So if you see here, what I'm going to do, well, my plan is, so we already have this table, which is uploaded file from the first tutorial, and you guys can create this one if you don't have it already. And then we're going to create another one called file upload session. So whenever the file, so for what the design pattern we're going to, follow now is we're going to first create a file upload session. Okay, we'll get the session ID and then the unique file name back and send it to the front end. Once that is sent into the front end will keep sending the file session ID and unique file name to the back end, and then also the file blob, basically the block of that file, to the back end, and the back end will append to the existing file until it is finished, fully uploaded. And then once it's fully uploaded, we will send back the file ID so that the front end can do whatever it needs to with that for future use. All right, guys, so that's pretty much the gist of it. Don't worry if you guys are maybe still a little lost. We will kind of have to refactor a lot of this because the way that it was set up to handle the first one, just 20 megabyte files or less, it won't really work. It's not really easy to go off top of that, unfortunately. So yeah, let's now do one thing. In the server side, we do have a db.ts. So if you see here, we're getting all this from the .env, which I don't have created here. So let's go ahead and create the .env file, and you guys will want to, copy your credentials from your whatever database you're using. So I have all my DB info saved in Notion, so I'm just going to get that pulled up real fast and just paste that into my .env file. Okay, so if you guys aren't aware of Notion, it's a great program actually. A lot of YouTubers I use it. I got it from there actually, so I recommend it if you guys don't. I keep all my .env stuff now in here so that I don't have to keep looking in here for the connection information, where I can just already have, since it's the same anyways. Okay, so now let me minimize that and let me paste that here. Cool, so I have all of the stuff that I need, and now my dbts will be able to pick it up, and I'm going to go ahead and run the server. If you guys, I didn't explain one thing. If you see here, I set up scripts in the package.json where it has it uses concurrently to run the server and the client side. So we just have to run one command, which is npm run dev, and it should open up both sides for us. Okay, we'll get that pulled up. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a change on the client side. So we're going to change all the validators. If you guys see here, I have two validations here for the file type and file size. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really have many files that are larger than 20 MB other than just videos that I've recorded for YouTube. So hopefully you guys have some and you can, upload those. Okay, so I'm going to put this side by side. Whoops. All right. Wait for that to load. And we're also going to add a progress bar component here with the Chakra UI library. I will show you guys that real quick. So we're going to just add the circular progress bar because I'm able to add a label to it really quickly. So we're going to add this one right here. And you guys feel free to, add which one you want. There's regular progress bars as well, but I just chose to go with this one because it was easy to set up. Okay, cool. So we have that there. All right. So hopefully this will work out of the gate. I hope so. So now, let me just make sure I have my app.ts set up properly. Let me go ahead and really fast. I just want to see my backend is working. I'm just going to test that real fast. Okay, cool. The backend is working. All right. And we got the message here that the DB is connected, so that's great. Okay, so let's minimize that folder. Let's go into our component here, which is the file upload component. So let's go ahead and for the accepted file types, this is what we have now. I'm going to add an MP4 because I have some videos from YouTube that I've recorded that are MP4 videos that I'm going to upload and show you guys. So I'm going to go inside the validators. This is going to be in the service file, validator service, and this is where I have the array. And you guys feel free to add whatever file type that will be greater than 20 MB. And then we're going to also go into the validators file and go to document file size. So I'm going to rename this. I don't know why I called it document in the first place. File size validator is just fine. And of course it's going to throw some errors. Let's see, I think I just need to fix the include. Yeah. Okay, cool. So in the file size validator, I have the max file size set to 20 MB right now, but I want to increase that to at least 1 GB. So what I have the number here. One second, let me pull that. So this is 1 GB in bytes. So if you're just wondering how I got that, I just typed in 1 GB to bytes and I went to this website. Oh, great. Let me see if I can expand this. Okay, cool. So if I just do 1 GB, cool. So I just, wait a second. Oh, okay. I had 2 GB instead of 1. I was wondering why that was like that. Yeah, we can have it to whatever we want. It's up to you guys. Really, it doesn't matter. Just make sure it's larger than 20 megabytes. We'll go with 2 GBs in this tutorial. I had planned for 1, but I think I had some videos that were over 1 gig and I just wanted to test that, so that's why I just had it to 2. It will also have to make this change to the backend, but we'll do that after. Let's get the progress bar added. So if you see here, all we need to do is include the circular progress, and then we're also going to add the label, circular progress label, and then all we need to do is come down here inside this flex component. We're going to create a new box component, and then we're going to add circular progress, and then we're going to add the label. Okay, so if you see, it works like this. So we're going to create some state here for the component to update. We're going to calculate the progress ourselves. Okay, so it's going to be 0, or sorry, it can't be 0 because we'll need that as the initial value. So we're going to need to make that undefined, and let's give this some types. So it can either be a number or it'll be undefined. And then let's call this file upload percentage, set file upload percentage. Cool. So we're only going to render this if the file upload percentage is a number. Okay, so I'm going to render this conditionally. So I'm going to say file upload percentage, and we can just do that. So I'm going to use and here, and I'm going to render this only if basically this is a truthy value at this point. So undefined will return false, and if it's a number, it will return true. But actually that won't work. It will need to be like this. We can do type of here, and we can just do number. Okay, so because even if it's 0, then it would be false and it wouldn't render. So technically we would want that to render. And now we want this value, which will be the file upload percentage. And then here we will do, we're going to use template string to render this. So it's going to be file upload percentage %. And then we're going to add a color attribute here to green 400. Cool. So I'm going to change. Now you won't see it, but let's go ahead and keep this as like 10 for now. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and add some margin top to this. So we can just do margin. Whoops, I am doing it in the wrong one. It needs to be here. We can do margin top, and let's just do, I don't know, 10. See how that looks. Yeah, that looks fine. Cool, so that's really it for the progress, and we'll be manipulating this progress ourselves. So let's change this back to undefined. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do, we updated our validators to accept 2 gigabytes or less, and also file extension. So the next thing we want to do is go inside our file service and kind of refactor that. So the file service right now makes a call to the backend called upload file endpoint. We are going to have now a second endpoint called create file upload session, I believe. We can call it whatever. I'm just trying to remember what I called it, but that's what we're going to create. And what that will do, like I said, it will create the file session ID and return the session ID and then the unique file name back to us. So let's go ahead and do that. I don't want to write too much code without actually showing you guys what's going on. Okay, so that I'm gonna do my best to not just keep writing code and not actually show what's going on here. All right, so we're gonna do create file upload session. You know what? Before I do that, let's go over how the breaking up the file logic will look like. I'm sure that's what you guys are here for. Like, how will that work? So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to have the file instance here. Okay, so it'll contain, if you see here, file dot, what we're after is this, we're going to slice the file. So we're going to use this method to slice the file into chunks, basically, or blocks, whatever you want to call. I'm just going to call it blocks. Let's just go with that. And it will return us a file blob. Okay, and that will contain the binary like code, like the data that we need to send to our backend. Okay, so let's go over that. Let's set that up. Let's go ahead and add some class properties. So I'm going to create a file session ID, set that equal to 0, and give that a type of number. I'm going to create a file name. This will be a string, and this will be empty. So these properties will be created, the values, whenever we create the instance of this. And then we'll have the file. So we're going to calculate the total file blocks that will be needed to send to our backend. So right now that'll be 0. And then we will need the max file size, basically the max block file size. So how much can we send as a block to our backend? Max file block size. And that's going to be simply 20 megabytes. So I can just go back to 20 MB 2 bytes. So yep, this number right here. Let's add that here. And then the next thing we have is we need to keep track of the file block count that we have uploaded so far. So this is just going to be a counter variable. Okay, cool. So now that's going to start at 0. And this will just get incremented each time we send a block to the backend. And then we're going to have 2 more properties. We're going to have a start block and then the end block. And then I will explain this. This will be useful for whenever we are slicing the file. So whenever we slice it, we need to have a start and then the end, in which is nothing but just a number. And that'll return the exact block size that we, the 20 megabytes. So block size. So we'll get, obviously at first, we'll start at 0 as start of the file and then stop at the 20 megabyte limit for the file. Cool. So now the first thing we want to do is let's set the total file blocks count, this one right here. So we'll calculate this in the constructor, but I'm going to create a method, and let's go ahead and do this under the static method. So I'm going to say this, make this private. Set total file blocks. I cannot type. Okay. So this will just simply be, we're going to do this .file .size. So if you see here, I have a class property called file, which gets set here from the file that we pass in from the component. So we're going to get the total file size, and we're going to divide that by the max file block size. and that will tell us how many chunks, or sorry, how many blocks we're going to have the file. So let's say we have a 100 megabyte file, right? So a 100 megabyte file would be divide that by basically 20 megabyte chunks, right? So we would have 5 blocks. Cool. And this file size would be in bytes, so that the conversion would be accurate here, since I did 100 megabytes. So that would be 5, and that's what we want to know. So we're going to set this here. I'm going to call that here. Okay, and that's all we really need to do in the constructor. The next thing we want to do is let's go ahead and if you see here this form data, let's go ahead and work on the file upload session endpoint. Okay, so now I'm going to start on the backend as well. We're going to take this in small chunks so that I don't write too much code, like I said, without showing you guys what the heck is going on. So I'm going to create this endpoint, create file upload session. And I'm going to go to the backend now. So let's close out of some of this. Okay, so in the backend, we have the app.ts. And I'm going to do app.post. So here, since we're using the Multer library, we need to specify no file should be expected here. We're actually not going to send any files here. We will send that with the file the upload file endpoint that we're going to modify. And let's go ahead and create the the method here in the file controller. All we're going to do here is validate the file size, the total file size, and the file type, and create the file session ID row. So we're going to create a method here, and I'm just going to call this create file upload session. And I'm just going to copy this, request response. Cool. So now let's go back here and say to hit this method, and that's it for the route. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the try catch block. And I'll just console.log in case there are any errors. And then we are going to do response status. We're going to send a 500 error. .json. And success will be false. And then the message will be error uploading file. Okay, so what we're going to do here is let's go ahead and add the validations that we need. So, and before we do that, what do we expect to be sent from the front end? So we're not going to grab the request.file, we're going to request .body. And all we're going to have here is the file name and then the file size. That's it. And then we're going to reuse these methods here for the validations. Copy that here. And this will be file name, file size. And I'm just, for this extension name, I'm just grabbing the path library here and then importing it. And let's go inside and fix our validations like we did for the front end. So in the service, if you notice why I have .file extension here and not in the front end, it's because this method here, extension name, will return a dot. So I didn't really want to worry about doing any extra parsing on the string. So I'm just going to do .mp4 in my case. And then the file size, I'm going to change this also to just file size validator. And of course, it's going to break some things. So we'll fix that. We'll fix this include. Okay, we can change that variable. All right, so now in the file size validator, so we're going to say 2 GB here. And let's go to the front end and let's grab the size. Okay. So that is, the validations are fixed. We don't need to worry about them. So now the next thing is, let's grab this logic. For this tutorial, I'm just returning an invalid request, but we can also, return proper error messages to the client. But if this is invalid, it's most likely, we probably do want to store it. It would be called by the front end, but if it doesn't, for some case, this is just a backup. So the next thing we're going to do is create a service to create the file upload session record in the DB. And let's just go back here. For some reason, let me close this and open it up. I'm not able to drag it for some reason. It's still not letting me drag. That's so weird. That is extremely weird. I probably need to restart my computer, but that's fine. All right. So you guys will want to make sure both of these files or tables are created. And we're going to have this files upload session. So the properties we'll have is the session ID, the original file name that the client uploaded, the unique file name that we're going to generate on our end in the back end, the extension, and the file size. If you're wondering why we have like kind of redundant, it's because once the final block is uploaded, we're going to copy the properties from here and add them here. Okay, so that's pretty much the reasoning there. And also, this is kind of like a temporary, this is a, like basically from this table, you can say, okay, the file exists. You can grab it. It's been fully uploaded. This is not a guarantee. Let's say the user uploaded a 1 GB file and they just left they closed out of the browser for say before it even finished. Then it wouldn't have created a record here and it would have stopped. So we don't want to store corrupted files in our final table. So that's a thought process here. I'm just going to go ahead and reset the data so that we have fresh data to work with. Cool. Okay, so now let's go into our service in the controller. Sorry, let's get out of the controller and go into the service. Let's create a service. Let's call this, I'm going to keep it like this. Let's call this file upload session. Sorry, let's call this file session service. And if you're wondering why I have these different cases, I like to follow them all capitals because I'm creating classes here. And usually classes should be like this. All right. So now what will exist in this service here? So let's go ahead and export this first. And we will have a static method called getInstance where it will return the file session service. And then let's create a variable here called instance. And we can expect this to be of type null or file session service, and then we're going to set this to null. And we're going to say if instance is equal to null, then instance is equal to new file session service. And then we're going to simply just return the instance. Alright, so we'll also need to create a repository class as well, so that we can make our DB changes. I have a file repo here, but this is really mainly for the file upload, the uploaded file table. Now I could just have both records, well, what do you mean? I'm sorry, both methods in here, but I want to just keep it separate so that the repo classes are reusable. Alright, so file session repo. Whoops, forgot to add the .ts. Okay, so this will also be the same old setup. So we're going to do instance equal to, or sorry, it's going to be type null, or file session repo, which doesn't exist yet. Create the file session repo, static get instance, return instance, and then export default file session, or sorry, file session repo dot get instance. And I probably need to do the same thing here. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our model here for what does it look like. So I have a models directory here, and I'm going to just call this file upload session.ts. And with this model, we're going to create a interface, file upload session, and we can just do export default on the interface. So the first thing we're going to need is the file session ID, and we'll need the unique file name. I'm basically just taking the structure of the DB and copying that as the model. This will be a string, file extension, file size, and then the original file name. Okay, and then also I'm going to make this optional, because whenever we're inserting a row, this won't be there, so we don't want to make that as required. Alright, so I'm going to import that. I'm going to also import the connection from the DB, and then I'll import the file upload session model, and that should be it. So I'm going to create an async method, create file upload session record, and this will return a promise with a type of number. So we'll return the file session ID, basically. And then what we're expecting here is the file details, which basically is the file upload session. All right, so we're going to add a try catch in case this fails. Let's console.log it, and then we'll return a 0 here. So now we will create a promise, and then we will have resolve reject, and then we are going to have the query. And I swear, by the I mean, I just really have been interested in like using an ORM because I really dislike writing these queries in string format like this because they just become unreadable and really hard to maintain in the long run. So I really prefer using like query builders and stuff like that. I will create a tutorial on that. And in my future tutorials, I plan on just using that instead of this. Okay. All right, so what are the values we're gonna insert in here? Basically all the model here, we're gonna follow that. So we will have the original file name. Doesn't matter what order you insert it in. The order will matter whenever you have the array as a second parameter. So we'll need to have the original file name, the unique file name, the file extension, and then the file size. Let me take that to the next line. And then we're going to have 4 question marks because we're going to parameterize the values so that we are safe against SQL injection. So we can destructure this if you guys wanted, but I'm just going to, since we have TypeScript, it's just like, I know exactly what I'm working with. So original file name, it needs to be in the order that you're inserting it in, unique file name, the file extension, and then the file size. And then we will expect a method here, a callback, basically. If there's an error, let's go ahead and reject this with a 0. We can also do false as well. It doesn't really matter. And also let's go ahead and console.log error.message. And then we will do a resolve of the result.insertID. So with insert queries, whenever you run this method, in the result, you will get a insert ID property. I wish they had a type definitions for the result, but I guess there's multiple variations of it. So probably that's why there's not one. All right, so that is there. Let's have that here. The file session. Okay, so now we just need to import this repo. There's going to be quite a bit of things that we do here. So besides just inserting the data, file session repo from repository file session repo. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we're going to create a method here, and we're going to call this the same thing we have in the file session repo. We're just going to make this async, and let's call this create file upload session record, and this will be a private method. Actually, no, I take that back. This will be a public one. This will be the entry point that a controller can call, and everything will happen inside of here. So what are we going to expect? We will expect a file name, and then we will expect the file size, and that should be it. We are going to return a promise, and we're going to return an object here. So this object will be containing the file session ID, which will be a number, and a unique file name that we're going to create. Okay, cool. So let's just go ahead and have those returns. Just going to give them default values for now. All right. What we need to do is we need to create the unique file name. So from the first video, the existing code in the file upload, we have that method already. where we create the unique. So we basically are using UUID version 4, having a timestamp here, and then appending the file extension. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. And then I'm going to paste that in here. So now I'm going to need to import the UUID. So let's go ahead and do that right here. And then we need to copy this get file extension method. So let's put that bottom here. And then let's import the path. Okay, so now we need to modify this. Now we need to pass in the file name explicitly here as a parameter. So it will be file name. So file name will be the parameter, and we need to keep this as a, string. And then this will just be file name. So now we'll need to pass that in. So one thing I guess we can do, no, that's okay. We'll just pass it in. So we have the create unique file name. We can expect that file extension here. Wait a minute. Yes, and then we're gonna take this method out of here. We're gonna have the file extension here. And now what we'll do is we'll create a variable, grab the file extension. Okay, and then we are going to create a unique file name now. Create unique file name, pass in the file extension, and that's it. So I'm going to actually move this up one. Okay. All right, so the next thing we want to do is create the file session record, because now we have everything we need. So we can do this. We can do file session ID is what we'll expect back, and then we're gonna await the file session repo method. Since it's async, let's pass in all the parameters we need. So we need the file extension, and then we need the file size. Then we need the original file name, which will be file name in this case, the unique file name, and that is it. So now we will get back all the properties we need. Perfect. So let's go ahead and import this service. And here, the controller. So we can say file session service from service, file session service. And by the time this code is uploaded to the repo, I'm going to fix all this to be the proper case so that it's all consistent. It's a small thing, but yeah, just wanted to put that out there. And now we'll come in here. We will say const. I'm going to destructure the object that we get back. So I'm going to do await file session service. And also I want to keep this, since this is a variable name, I want to keep it camel case. Cool. We're going to do file session service, create file upload session record. We're going to pass in the file name and the file size. And then what we get back here will be the file session ID and the unique file name. We need to check that the file session ID is not equal to 0, basically. And if it is, we need to return. We can either throw an error here, or we can just return this response. It basically would be an internal server error. Something went wrong. And I'll just keep the error message like Error creating file upload session. Now, I don't know if that's something the user would really care about. So I'm just going to keep it like this, error uploading file. Now, as a developer, if you saw that message, you'd be like, oh, hey, I know where that is, but we want to keep the messages UI friendly. All right. And now we want to do response.status. We're going to do 201, which means it's been HTTP created, which means we created a record in the backend. So that's generally what you want to use for post calls. Success, true. And then we'll have the file session ID, and then we're going to pass back the file name property. I don't want to pass back the unique file name because in the code, I don't want it to be known that this is really unique or whatever, you know. I just want it to know that here's the file name that you need to pass back to the other API call. All right, so that's done actually. And let's go ahead and give this a test. So in the file upload service, this is the one. Okay, let's go to the one in the component. Let's go ahead and close out of all these. Let's go to the service here. Okay, so right now the only method we have that's public is the upload file. So I'm going to go ahead and create another one called create file upload session. And this will return a promise. So we're going to have a different object that we return here most likely. Let's see, we're going to need to return the file session ID and well, actually we don't need to return it because the only places that will use this file session ID and the file name is inside the service. So we're just going to set it here. All right. So this will return literally a object of success, which will be a Boolean, and a message, which we will keep optional, because if it's true, we don't need to return a message, only if it's false. Let's go ahead and create the API call. So I'm going to just copy this, and I'm going to just undo these changes. Okay, so I'm going to rename this to upload session response. Let's rename this actually to file session response. And then we're going to convert this to JSON. And then what we'll do is we're going to check if it's false. So if success is equal to false, then we're going to return success false, and then the message we'll get from the backend. Otherwise, we're going to set the file session ID to response.json file session ID, and then file name. All right, and then we'll just return a true here. Cool. That is it. Now let's go ahead and test this. We've written a lot of code. So we'll come to this file upload. And right now I have it calling upload file. So I'm going to go ahead and call create file upload session. And let's see here. We'll leave this toast as it is. We're going to pretty much modify a lot of these things, so we'll leave it how it is for now. I just want to verify that it's being created in the backend. So I'm going to go ahead and just upload a regular file. And we do have some errors here. So unexpected field. Oh, yes. So I didn't do one thing. So this form data, we need to modify that. We need to create a new method here. So we don't need to necessarily pass in form data here. We can just return just JSON data. So what we can do is get file session details, and this will return, let's see, this will return an object. And then this object will contain the file name and the file size, which is what the backend expects. And what we're going to do now is return the file name. So that file name is coming from, this can be a little bit confusing because I don't want you guys to think we're returning this. We're actually returning the file name from this object here, the file one. So this.file.name. Same thing with the file size. We're returning it from here. Now, what we will do is we can do JSON.stringify, and we're gonna get the file session details. Okay, so now let's see if that will work. Okay, cannot destructure because, okay, so one thing that I need to do, because I'm using JSON, in the headers, I'm not specifying that it's an application JSON. So what I'm gonna do, just to save us some time, I'm gonna create a form data actually. So what we can just work with the form data object here. And then we can do form data.append, and this will be file name, and this will be this.file.name form data.append. So size is going to be a type number, so we need to convert that into a string because form data will not accept numbers. But don't worry, we will convert that back into a number into the backend. So we're going to do return form data. Okay, and then let's change one thing in the backend because probably the validation will fail. So let's change this to let, so that I can we can convert this into an integer. Cool. So now it should work. Hopefully, fingers crossed. No, it did not. Let's see. Cannot destructure file name. Request body as it is undefined. Why is request.body undefined? Well, there's something that I did wrong then. Let me look in the app.ts. That looks right to me. Let me go ahead and just console.log what request.body looks like. Okay, it is undefined. That is because, oh, got it. The reason why it is undefined is because of this JSON.stringify. Let's go ahead and try that now. Perfect. So now we got our request.body. Let's go ahead and check in the DB that it got successfully created. Cool. So we got the unique file name created and we got the original file name created. Awesome, guys. Awesome. If you're wondering why I have like redundant file extension, I probably explained this, but I don't know, if I ever need it in the future, I can just grab the column name instead of having to grab this and then do some parsing. Let's check one more time on the component. So let's check in the file upload. or so the file, not in the file upload. Okay, I guess we won't be able to see because we're not storing it in any state. Yeah, this will just be in memory, actually, the file session ID and the unique file name. All right, so now that the file session is getting created, let's go to the fun part and do the uploading part. All right, so the next thing we want to do is let's set up our file blocks. So this is still going to be upload file. We're just going to refactor the backend. And what we're going to do is refactor this method. And I'm going to rename this to be get file data. Form data seems very too generic. And then we'll keep this. Now we need to do a couple things. We need to create a method here for the file. So we are going to use this file property and we're going to return the blob here. So let's call a method here called get file block. This will return a blob. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the this.start block and we're going to set this to the this.end block. And it's just 0, right? So we're just setting 0 to 0. It is kind of wasted, but we will, once we increment the slicing, it will be, okay, 20 megabytes is now the start block, and then we're going to add 20 megabytes to the end block. It should make sense here if you guys are confused. And now we're just going to increment the end block by the max block size, which is 20 megabytes. So yep, we'll start from 0 to 20 and then 20 to 40, and then we'll keep going on. So we'll now grab the blob. We'll do this.file.slice. So we're going to do this.start block, this.end block. And we are going to increment the file block count because we have sliced the first, we have started slicing now. Now we'll return the blob. And now this blob, this method is going to be called here. Whoops. All right, so now we'll get that. Now we also want to send the session ID, the file session ID. This.file session ID, and then we also want to append the file name. So this is the unique file name. And then we also want to, there's one more concept that I think I left out in the initial explanation, is if it's the last block that's getting uploaded. So why is that important? Well, if it's the last block that's getting uploaded, we need to tell the backend that, so then the backend can go ahead and create a record here of the file that's been fully uploaded. Otherwise, it would kind of cause an it would just, the backend would never know when to create the file record. So yeah, it would get uploaded, it would just never know when to actually create the DB record. So now we're going to say is last block, and then we're going to calculate this. So we'll create a method here, is last block. This will return a Boolean, and all this is going to do is check if this.block count is equal to this.total file blocks. So once this gets incremented, this will be eventually be equal to the total file blocks, and at that point, if it's equal, then that we know, then that's the last file block that's getting uploaded to the backend, and that's it. So we're going to say if this is true, then 1, otherwise 0. And like I said, the form data doesn't allow numbers, so we need to convert this to a string, unfortunately. but we can easily convert that to integer in the backend. And yeah, that's it. So hopefully that made sense to you guys, especially the file, getting the file blocks. You know, just think on this and look at the code again if you guys are not fully comfortable with it. All right. So this will be this. Okay, so now we need to make some changes to the backend. So in the backend, yes, we will be expecting the file from request.file, but we will also be expecting now other properties from the request.body. We're going to expect the file session ID. We're going to be expecting the file name, and then is last block property. So we need to add validations for a ID integer. We need to add a validation for the unique file name. This is not just like, you know, just a regular file name. The unique file name, so UUID will have a validate method that we can use. So what we're going to do is create those. So we're going to create the integer one first, and then this last block file, the last block one, is either going to be a 1 or a 0. So we don't necessarily need to create a validator for that. We could just simply check if it's 1 or a 0. If it is, then good. Otherwise, throw an error, return an error. So let's do is last block. And then let's do file session ID, convert that to an integer. Okay, cool. So now we have that data. Let's go ahead and create a validator here. And if you're wondering why we need these validators, it's because the request could get hijacked basically, and you know, the data could get manipulated, or some malicious user could, you know, in React it might be harder to manipulate the front, you know, the data, but it's still probably possible. So we want to make sure that we validate our stuff. In these tutorials, I know it kind of adds more time, but I just want to make sure I do show good practices, even though the tutorial purpose is very specific to one thing in this case, which is file uploading, large files. Let me know if you guys don't really want this anymore. I will take your feedback accordingly, and then I can adjust if you think, you know, it's taking too much time. Or if you guys do like this, do let me know. I'll feel good about it. All right, this stop value is equal to value. Validate method, which will return a Boolean, and this is probably the easiest one. We could obviously just have an if condition in the controller, but we want to create these to be generic so that they can be reusable in the future. And we can just return input value must be greater than 0. And then let's go ahead and create the other one, which is the unique file name validator that we're going to create. And that's what we're going to call it, unique file name validator.ts. And let's go ahead and export this. Okay, and then now for this one, we're going to use the validate method, and we're also going to use a version method from the UUID. Let's create the class unique file name validator. We're going to have the private file name, and then we'll have the constructor, which will take in the file name, and then we'll set this file name equal to file name. Okay, so now we're going to have, again, two methods, validate and then this will return, so we're going to call that validate method, and thankfully this will do the validation of the unique ID for us, which is absolutely fantastic. And one thing that I want to mention here is in the unique file name, we are having the extra properties appended. So the only thing we're validating here exactly is this part. It will not know what to do with this part. It will throw an error. It will actually not throw an error. It will return false. So in order to avoid that, what we need to do is we need to kind of parse that data. So what we can do here is we can just say file name, and then we can do this dot file name, and we're gonna basically use the split method. And let me see how the parameters, is it split? JavaScript split. Yeah, it is split. Okay, so it's called like this. And we know the pattern of this, so we're going to split it by the underscore and just grab the first index in the array. So now we will be validating like this. And then we're also gonna check that the version of this is 4, I believe. So let me just check that real fast. Yes. So we're gonna check here version. This dot, it's gonna be file name equal to 4. Well, we're gonna have the get error message. Return invalid unique file name. Cool, let's go ahead and export this. All right, so now enough with the validations. Let's go ahead and add that to the file validator server. And in there, we're just gonna have a couple methods added. So we will do async function, and we're going to do validate integer. This will return a promise with the validator response. So we're going to basically lazy load these validators. It might be totally unnecessary, but I just went ahead and played with that to see, how that would look like. So, and it worked. So I just kept it. So we're only gonna bring in the validators that we need on demand. Otherwise, we won't import all of them. So we will do validator, new integer validator, and it's gonna expect the file name. Okay, what does it know? Oh man, why did I? Oh, sorry, it's gonna be file size, file session ID. Sorry, and sorry, this should just be an input. What's a better name for that? Let's just do value. And this should be of type number. Cool, that'll work. And is valid. We're going to do validator dot validate. And then we're just going to return is valid. And so then that will return a Boolean, and then we're going to do is valid. We'll get the error message. Okay, one more time. Let's go ahead and add that here. Let's create this method called validate unique file name. File name. I'm just going to copy this now. And then let's go ahead and copy all this. All right, so this will be unique file name validator. We could just call this file name validator. Okay, pass in the file name here. Cool. All right, so let's add this here. Okay, let's go back to the controller now. So now in the controller, we can call those. In the controller here, we can simply just import these methods, and let's go ahead and call them. So we're going to do valid file session ID. And then const valid file name. Okay, so now let's add this to this giant if condition. Well, not giant, but it's going to become giant. All right, so now we're going to have the valid file session ID is valid. Also as the valid file name. Is valid. So let's see, do we need the file type? Sorry, we do need the file type. We don't really need. And we don't need the file size because this will always just be 20 megabytes or less. I guess we could validate it, but right now it's hard coded to 2 gigabytes, so it wouldn't work for us anyway, so it's okay. We can leave those out. All right, cool. We need one more for the is last block that we're just going to do here. So we're going to do if is last block is not equal to 0 and it's not equal to 1. So if it's not equal to either of these, then we need to return an error. That means the data is either there's some logical error or it's been changed on purpose by the user. Cool. And I'm just keeping a generic message here, invalid request. We could go into more further in depth, but I think this is fine. We never want to, we don't always want to, return exact messages sometimes, especially if it's maliciously done. These are good generic messages that we can have. All right, so now we need to modify this good old file upload session or file upload service. Let's go inside here and let's see what we need to modify. First and foremost, this will be completely changed. So let's go ahead and add an interface for the file data that we expect. So we will still be needing the express motor.file because we're going to send the blob in. We will need the file session ID. And then we will also need the file name and then is last block. Now this is going to be right now it's of type number, but I want to send it in as a Boolean. So yeah, let's work with that. And then, so what we can do now is expect this to be a file data and this also to be a file data. Cool. So we're going to have to fix a lot of these things and we'll do that. No worries. So I want only one method entry point that this controller can call without knowing what it needs to do. So I'm going to create a async method here called write file data. And this is going to return a promise of object type So we'll just have our success and then the file ID, which is optional. Cool. And let's create the curly braces. So now what we want to do now is this file, this write to file stream. Let's move that up a little. Let's have it right here. So what we're doing in here is, well, what I had originally was we would get the buffer and have it as type base64, and then it would write to the file. Okay. And if you see here, there's an option that we need to pass now. So this is a file path, and there's a flag that we need to pass in now to append the file. So let me write this and then I'll explain this. Node.js, let's see if this will have it. Append file. So we're not using append file, but I think there's a flag that we can. Okay, let me look at this. What is it? What are we using here? Create write stream. So we have this options that we can pass in, and the default one is W, which is write for the flag. Oh man, I didn't. Okay, so here, these are all the supported flags. The one that I'm using is A, so open file for appending. The file is created if it does not exist. All right, so that's what we want to do. If the file doesn't exist, then that's what it will get created. And if it does exist, it will append to the file. So that's exactly what we want. And I just thinking out loud with you guys, when I was writing this, I was thinking about one thing is, what if the user manipulates the unique file name and it still gets validated? What would happen then? It would create another file record. So one extra layer of security that we can do is we could potentially make a DB call here, get the file session ID and unique file name, query it on that. We could create an index so that it's even faster. Query it on that. And if it exists in the DB, if it returns one row, then we know that exists. If it doesn't, then we need to throw an error saying that, this doesn't exist. And it would prevent these kind of things from happening where like data would get kind of getting messed up. I'm not going to do that. It's just something I wanted to think aloud for you guys, and something if you guys are interested can manipulate in your, implement in your projects. So cool. Let me know your thoughts on that. Now in the file stream.write, we need to get the file. So this will be file.file. Okay, let's rename this. Let's call this as file data to avoid confusion. So this file data. Now we have the file dot buffer. Cool. And we're going to make this into an async method. So the reason is I want this to return a Boolean. And the way it is right now, they use callback methods, so I can take advantage of the reject resolve and have that going for us. Return await new promise, resolve, reject. And now we're going to return a promise of type Boolean. So now I'm going to put all this inside this method block. And then here, if it's an error, we would reject false. We'll have another event listener here on. So this would be on finish. We will just simply resolve this to true. Cool. Not much refactoring that we had to do, but still there. All right. So now we will file stream response. We will write to the file stream. And then we can do file data dot. We're going to pass in the file. Oh, sorry, it needs the unique file name. And that is because to grab the path. So yeah, let's go ahead and pass that. So that will be file data dot file name. So in fact, we don't need to even pass this in anymore. We can just grab it from the class property. Cool. All right, so now that is the writing to the file stream. That's really it. This file stream method will take care of appending the file and writing it completely for us, which is awesome. Takes away a lot of the hard work. All right, so now we're going to say if file details, if file stream response is equal to false, we want to return success as false, and that's it. Whoops. Otherwise, we will need to check for if this is a last block or not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just have a variable created here at file ID equal to 0. And I will just say if this.file data.is last block, okay. We're going to say file ID is equal to await this.create file record. So we have this method here. Yes, create file record. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this create file upload. It's no longer needed. We don't need this create unique file name. Do we need this file extension? Yes, we will. So this will be file data dot this dot file name, because this will grab it from the unique file name. All right. So the original file name. So we'll need to make some modifications here. And now that I'm thinking about it, we don't actually need this method. We're going to make a DB call to the file session table to grab these properties that already exist. So if it's the last block, we will create a file record. And right now it's expecting just a unique file name. So we're going to change that up. We're going to expect the file session ID, and actually we can just grab all this from the class properties, so we don't need to pass anything in. So now what we need to do is first retrieve the file session details. So we need to retrieve this row right here. We have the service that we created, file session service. And let me go ahead and fix some of these errors. Let's go ahead and just remove this. And that's fine. Right now we can just do success true. Okay. And then what is going on here? We need to, let's fix this. So it's expecting all these properties now. So this will be coming from the request.file. And then we need the file name, file session ID. And if you're wondering how I'm getting those to pop up, if you do control space, it'll auto show that pop up right there. And yeah, cool. So this now will be called write file data. And then we'll be expecting the file ID. Well, actually it'll be like a response. So file response dot success, and then here we will do file ID is file response dot file ID. Okay, cool. So that our controller should be fixed now. Let's go ahead and fix this up. And let's go ahead and add a method in our file service to retrieve the file details. So we're going to create a async method here. Let's call this here. Create it here. And we can call this method find file session details. This will take in the session ID and then the file name, which is the unique file name. So I am kind of doing that validation in a way, because if it doesn't exist, then yeah, we will return some kind of error. So with that being said, we need to go inside the repo. We need to create a method here. So we'll create a async method, find file session. Okay, so this will take in also the same things, file session ID, file name, and then this will return an array of the file upload session model. So if you see here, we have this model already. Otherwise, it will return false. So the reason why I'm saying false is because if in our try catch, we'll just return false. Let's console.log the error. And now let's go ahead, do our usual querying. The queries always take some time to write, even though it's like super straightforward. You still have to just go through the process of having to write the select from, getting all the details. Okay, so I'm going to use backticks, and then we'll just have a method like this for now. Okay, cool. So, does it not like something? Return, oh, sorry. Return await new. Cool. So here, I'm going to create a selects array. And I'm going to have my columns that I want in here itself. So we have the unique file name. I'm going to give it a alias so that we can use camel case. I prefer to work with that than like this. And then we'll have the file size. And like I said, we need all these properties to store into the uploaded file table, which is our final table. Original file name. Cool. So now, if you're wondering how we're going to use this array in the query, well, I'll show you. So we can do selects.join. So it will convert this array into a string separated by a comma. So that this way I don't have to write everything in this string. I can just write in an array, and it makes it easier if I ever need to add properties, add columns. I can just add it to this array or remove them easily, rather than having to modify the string itself. Where file session ID is equal to question mark and unique file name is equal to question mark. And then here, all we're going to need here is the file session ID and then the file name. Okay, so this will have the error in results, And you guys know the routine. If error, then reject, and let's throw in error. Let's create a new error object, pass in the error message, so that way it'll be caught by the catch block. Okay, this is basically like throwing an exception. If you guys are familiar with, C# or PHP, so languages like that. Resolve, and then we'll just resolve the results. This will be an array. Whoa, let me fix this. Of type this file of this model. Okay, so now what we will do here is just simply call this from in the service finds file session details. So we will do file details await file session repo dot find file session. Okay, so what this is going to return is either an array or false. So I'm going to do default false, and all I'm going to do is check for if this is an array type. If this is an array, then return the file details and grab the first, the 0th element in the array. Okay, so this, I'm going to add a response here, return type, sorry. So it'll be either false or file upload session model. So I had it, that was automatically imported for me. Cool. Now I can import this file session service from cool. So now, since I have the instance of it, we need this for creating the file record, right? So the first thing we're going to do is file details await file session service dot find file session details, pass in the session ID, and then the file name. Okay. All right. So now we have the file details. We need to check for if the file details are false, we need to return 0. And that response will be handled by the controller. Otherwise, we will call our repo method, file repo dot create file record, and this is going to be expecting the uploaded file model. So we'll have the file extension. I'll grab those details in just a second. Okay, so we can either destructure this. We know what it looks like because we know what the return type is now. Since it's not false, it's going to be of the model file upload session. So we can just do file details dot file extension dot file size, file details dot unique file name. Alrighty guys, so this will return us a number as well. I believe it'll return a 0 if it's false. And that is it here. So now what we need to do is call that create file record here. Okay, and then we will return the file ID. Okay, it'll either be 0 or it can be 0 or a proper one. Sorry, greater than 0. I don't know why I meant by proper one. All right. So yeah, and if you see here, only one method is available in this service that's public. And I did that on purpose so that if any other place, let's say you had a huge app and there are different modules that needed this file upload service, to make this generic, like we just want the controller to know which method to call and not what all the logic to do. Yeah, like we could have definitely had these into public methods and then the controller would take care. But you know, it's doing too much at that point, I feel like. Let the service take care of all that. And you know, if your method's getting big, try to break them up into smaller methods. Like you could have this into a method like check if file record needs to be created, and if it's true, then call this method. Otherwise, just return this. So just a thought there. Okay, so I do have this listed as post, but the thing is, it's not always going to create a record. Technically, it does, to be honest. So I'm going to return the status as 201. And the reason why I say to be honest is because there is a file that gets appended. It's not necessarily creating, but it is appending it. And we could use patch for that. So you guys, it's up to you guys. We can use post or patch. At this point, it's just either one will work. It's just which one makes the most sense to use semantically, like what is a proper verb to use. I'm just going to go ahead and stick with post. And my first thought is probably using patch, but yeah, I think post would also be fine in this case. All right, guys, shall we see if this is working? Sorry, before we do that, let's calculate the progress percentage. That is one thing I forgot to do. So now we just need to stick to the front end. And also we need to create the, in the component, we need to create the method call. So we do need to calculate the upload progress. And that is going to be something like, let's create the method here. So calculate upload progress. So we're going to say if this dot total file blocks is equal to 0, that means, well, wait a minute. Why would I have that not equal to 0? It would be 1. Oh, and one thing, guys, I forgot to do here. I forgot to add a math.ceil method. Ooh, I'm glad I caught that. So if you have a fraction, like let's say, you know, you have 1 over 2, it's 0.5. You would need to round that up to 1, but it's not really a good example. Let's say you have 1.5 as a result of this. So that's 1.5 blocks. Well, that doesn't really make sense. You need to round that up to 2 so that 2 API calls are made. And that way we can make the correct number of calls. So this, if it's equal to 1, okay, that means there's only one file block. We need to return 100. Okay, that means it's going to be uploaded in the first block itself completely. Otherwise, we're going to do math.round. We're going to round it up, and we're going to do this dot file block count divided by this dot total file blocks times that by 100. And that's it, guys. Pretty easy, right? Okay. So this upload file response, we need to modify this a little bit. We need to add to it. So we're going to add the progress value, which will be a number. We're going to add a Boolean, which will be upload next block. Okay, that lets the component know, should we call the upload file method again or no? And then we will return the file ID. We won't really have a need for it in here, but in the future tutorials, we will have a need for it. Because I'm going to build on top of this one probably 1 or 2 more times. Show you guys some extra stuff. Alrighty, so now let's see. If it's false, what do we do here? We will set the progress as 0. And then upload next block will be set to false explicitly. And then now what we're going to do is create a variable called upload file response equal to, and we know that this will be a type of that interface. Success will be true, and then the message will be, well, at this case the message will be just empty, and then the progress, we are going to call that method, and then upload next block. So we already have a method here that gets us the is last block. So if it is the last block, we no longer want to make the API call. So we want to take the inverse value of that. So if it's not the last block, so if it's false, then yes, we want to call the next, we want to upload the next block. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. And then we want to say if response dot file ID is greater than 0, we will store the file ID here to response like that. And then we will also, that mean at this point we know that it's been successfully uploaded, and we can just have this message uploaded successfully and simply just return this variable. Perfect. Now I hope it's the last thing. No guarantees. In the file upload, we need to now make an API call recursively. Okay. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So right here, after the file upload session is created, we need to check for the response here. If the file upload session, response.success is equal to false, set the upload form error, and then we'll do this file session file upload response. And this is not a good name for this. I didn't get to change it. File session details dot message. Now message, it's going to probably throw an error saying message could be null or undefined, I guess. So I'm just going to use this, and I'm just going to say error uploading file. So if it is not set, this will set this as a last resort. But we know that it will be always returned, so we're just making the compiler happy at this point. And one thing that I want to add here, this element.value resets the value here. Okay, if there's an error, we no longer want to keep that, because what if the user's like, I want to just going to keep trying to upload the same file over and over again until they get it to work. It won't actually work because we have this working on an onChange method, onChange event listener. So wanted to point that out. So now once that is done, let's go ahead and return this. And now we will create a method inside this method called upload file, make it async. Okay, so now we're going to say return file service dot upload, and now this is going to call the service method. We will get a dot, then we'll get a response, and this response will be of type upload file response. Okay, since it's implied there, I'm not going to go ahead and explicitly have that because we know that's what the response will be. If response.success is equal to false, we will set the upload form error to response.message. And let's go ahead also set the upload percentage to undefined. And at this point, I believe we just need to return. Okay. And if it's not false, then that means we will set the file upload percentage to response.progress. And now we'll check for if response.upload next block. Okay, remember it's a Boolean. We will recall this recursively. So this will actually call this again. Because it made the API call, we got the response, and it's not done yet. Now, if it's false, we want to reset this to undefined. And then we want to also, let's see here, we want to reset the element.value at this point and at this point. Okay, and then we're gonna, this toast logic here, we're just gonna copy, paste it in this else. All right. So now this will be response. Cool. So now the toast is done for us, and we're going to resolve the promise. So I'm just going to create an instance of the promise like this and resolve the response. And if this is the case, I will reject it. And we can just do false. The reason why I'm doing this is since this is an async method, we're going to have to call this here. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to call upload file. And then all I really care about if there's any error. This inside here will resolve and take care of everything that we need. So if there is an error, we need to console.log the error. And then let's go ahead and also set the upload form error. Error occurred uploading the file. Let's element.value. Okay. And I wonder if I did this. Where is the ending bracket? Yep, that's the, I put it in the wrong place. All right, guys. I think that is it. I hope I didn't go too fast, and I hope that made sense. I know it might be a little bit confusing, so let me just reiterate. We created this method, okay, inside this handle file upload, so that we can call this recursively. That's the whole point of it. And then we will call file service upload. Once we get the response, we will decide, do we need to call this method again? So it will call this one. And then if it's done, then it will take care of all basically what we had before. And then this is just the first call, the initial call to this. Okay. All right. Shall we give it a test? I think this should work. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a small file just to make sure it works. And there we go. There has already been an error. Error occurred while writing to the stream. So I think I know what the error is. There is no image folder here. So if you see in the service, not in the file session, in the file upload, see it's trying to go inside image, but there doesn't exist. So, oh, whoops. Let's try that again. Okay. that should work. It didn't show the progress bar, and I have a suspicion why that is, but let's make sure. Okay, we got our file, guys. Perfect, perfect. And let's make sure that our details are there. Perfect, guys. Cool. So let's go ahead and upload a large file, and then we'll come back to that progress bar not being shown. So I have some videos. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. The progress bar is there, and it's like super fast. I mean, I've seen, if you've seen how YouTube works, it's like relatively slow than that. And obviously because you have millions of users probably uploading at the same time. So that's what I want to bring up with you guys is this is super fast on your local, but don't expect that probably to happen if you have concurrent process happening, you know, where like multiple people are trying to upload at the same time, and it's like larger files. This file that I uploaded was like, I don't even know which, this one. This is 301 megabytes. So let's see if it worked. Oh, we can't do that. We can't view it in VS Code. Let's go ahead and reveal the file explorer. And I don't know why I called it image now that I think about it. I should probably call it like files or something. But that is okay. And voila, perfect. You can see that the full file has been uploaded because this is 301 megabytes. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, just to show you that the progress bar does work for the 20 megabyte, if it's smaller than a 20 megabyte file, let's see how this is 108 kilobytes, of course. It's no way going to show the progress bar because it's so fast. But just to emulate it, one thing that we can do here is we can have a set timeout. We can do this by two seconds delay. All right, shall we give that a try? Let's go back to downloads. Oh, you know what? Because it doesn't, sorry, that was the wrong place to do it. We need to do it here. Okay, just to show you guys real quick. It's a picture of my dog. I don't think that even worked. Yeah, you know, it's too fast. It really is too fast. I just want to get this to work. I just want to show you. I know that, okay, what we can do here is once the progress bar is updated, let's have this set timeout. Let's keep all this logic in here. Okay, we should be able to see it now. Yeah. Yep, there you go. So that's what you would have to do if your product manager was like, yeah, I want to see a progress bar regardless. You'd have to purposely use a set timeout. But yeah, this is it, guys. This is all I have. I just wanted to show you how to upload large files. And, you know, couple things I want to talk about. I'm going to just go ahead and upload one for fun. This is, I think, 1 gig. So this is probably going to take much longer. And as you guys can see there that it's going in increments of 1%. So that's interesting. Yeah, the couple things I want to talk about is whenever, you know, we set this max block file size to be 20 megabytes, I'd if you guys are implementing this in a project or you already have, I'm curious as to what you guys block it up into. Do you do 1 megabyte? Do you do 10 megabytes? What do you do? I know that you can set a limit from your backend to, only accept, like let's say 20 megabytes of post data, or whatever you set that to. So you can definitely, decrease this block size to 10 megabytes if it puts too much of a load on your server, because that's way too fast. And, it's just it's only handling one thing, but if it's handling multiple, I'm sure it will slow down. So let me just make sure that worked. I'll feel really good. Oh, well, did it? Wait, what just happened? I don't know what just happened. Let me go ahead and reveal the... Oh, okay. So is this the one? Yeah, this is the 1.87 gigabyte one. And yep, this is a tutorial for the first video that I had for 20 megabytes or less. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop talking now. Guys, if you like this video, if you like this tutorial, please do let me know. The feedback really helps me. It's really motivating whenever you guys say that I love this tutorial or it helped you out. It makes me want to create more. Quicker, of course, too, because you guys know from telling my videos, they're super long and I'm really trying to cut back on that, on the time. Hey guys, so if you made it this far to the video, which is the end, I really appreciate you, and I would ask you to please consider subscribing and liking this video. We are close to 1,000 subscribers, which is freaking awesome. I'm really happy about that. And I've just been working with the file-based projects, I would say. So the next project I'm probably going to upload is how to download a file from the client side, from your backend. All right. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.